work tonight to achieve perfection. Before I do anything, I gotta give honor to the Most High God for allowing us to be back at the same place in which we had sad tears. And I just want you to know that the God I serve, when he closes a door, he opens up a door that's giving you unimaginable success. This is uncommon favor.
Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known and an Emotional Dawn Staley, one of the most successful coaches of all time. Certainly, she has done it all. An undefeated season capped off with a national championship. We got Tacoma's back with us. Tacoma Roebuck, the managing editor of the Chicago Defender. We appreciate you, and we expected to be joined again by Don Montgomery as well. But we are going to talk about the championship. And yes, I see Power 96 is already in my head because I said the same thing. He says, Happy Monday, and I see the media will not let South Carolina celebrate without bringing up Caitlin Clark. They made it all about her. We're going to talk about that. Also, it's Solar Eclipse Day. Amazing to be able to witness a solar eclipse, but you got to be careful in looking at that. We'll discuss that as well. And gambling addiction is growing in the United States while callers to hotlines are younger as online sports betting is booming. Also, desperation has risen in Haiti with Americans trying to get out of the country. We'll bring you the latest there. And an all-white school board in Missouri still wants to eliminate Black history, Black literature, and more. We are going to dive into that situation down in Missouri as well. But again, we have the man with us this morning, Tacoma Roebuck. Tacoma, what a night, what a day, I should say. Yesterday, South Carolina, they put the clamps down on Iowa and came away not only with an undefeated season, but the national championship. Dawn Staley, she that's an amazing job. Last year they were stunned in the Final Four, and that could have just really, really made for a difficult season this year. That the way it ended last year, but they finished the job in Cleveland on Sunday. They vanquished the Hawkeyes 87-75, becoming the 10th team in Division I history to complete an undefeated season. Your initial thoughts on the big victory and talk about the aftermath, if you will.
Well, whoever decided to put the church organ music behind her post-game comments, that was a brilliant stroke of genius there. She definitely took us to church, uncommon favor. But I think with the game, clearly the best team won, even though people made it all about Caitlin. And Caitlin is a tremendous athlete. But the bigger story, as you alluded to, is to have a perfect season, 38-0, and really slow down one of the most dynamic offensive players that we've seen in some time, and to do it as a total team. It's a total team effort.
Total team effort. And, she 2 championships for Dawn Staley in the last 3 years. Power 96 says she has the it factor. And one of the things he mentions, I was going to mention this too, she lost 5 starters, but still went undefeated and won the national championship. How difficult is that? How amazing is that?
Yeah, that's incredible to me because, again, like you mentioned, losing 5 starters. And I think also the uncommon ability to self-scout, to see when we're wrong last year when they lost to Iowa by 4 points. One of the things they didn't do well in that game last year was shoot threes. But again, she was able to identify the talent. She had those two dynamic freshmen who came off the bench and definitely provided a spark. And as you've seen last year to this year, even though they won 36-1, I believe, last year,
Hmm.
was a complete 180 from how they performed last year. And that's the
Oh
testament
yeah.
to Celia as a leader of a great operation, in my opinion.
Yeah, and South Carolina becomes the first team as well to, at least in modern history, to win a title after returning none of its primary
Hmm.
starters from a team that reached the Final Four the previous season. Um, Dawn Staley said it best. She said they made history.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love the most is that she shouted out her advanced scout immediately after the game. I guess the person who was responsible for putting together the game plan to really like slow down Caitlin Clark, and it worked.
Yeah, they swarmed her. Um, Mike V says Louis Vuitton Dawn.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and here's an incredible stat. We talked about the undefeated season, but what is also incredible is the 109-3 record that Dawn Staley has put together over the past 3 years. Dawn Montgomery is with us. Dawn Staley, I'm mentioning the record over the past 3 years, 109-3. That's some legendary stuff.
Very legendary from
We
a
can't hear you,
legendary.
Dawn.
Oh,
We
can
got
you
to
hear
hear
me?
that voice.
Oh my God. Hold
There
on a
you go.
second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you're very low.
Let's turn me up a little bit here. See if I can do that. Can you hear me more?
No, just a very
Uh-oh.
little.
I'll take this off. How about that?
There you go.
Can you hear me better now?
We getting there.
Give me 1 second. Keep talking.
All right. While Dawn gets it together,
Mhm.
Takuma, again, the 109-3 record is so impressive. And Dawn Staley herself, she is a two-time Player of the Year,
Hmm.
who played in three Final Fours. She
Yeah.
missed out on the championship herself, but she becomes just the fifth head coach to win at least three national titles. What's the magic behind Dawn Staley?
As an outsider, I would say her ability to relate to people, her ability to reach people. There were a couple of moments. I know that when she brought Camila Cardoso, the most outstanding player of the tournament, there were a couple of key things, right? One is her intentionally bringing her family over to see their daughter for the first time play in the States
Mm,
was a really powerful way to really identify and reach one of her players. Her ability to deal with people one on one. This is we're talking about somebody who's one of the more transformational leaders that we're seeing in sports. We have to put her up there with Nick Saban. You have to put her up there with Bill Belichick. We have to put her up there with those people who are not only producing dynasties, but on a grand stage, they're really showing you what leadership looks like. And the record speaks for itself. That is uncommon. That should be the main story that we're talking about.
right.
Other than, Miss Clark, all due respect, not completing the deal.
Well, yeah, and so, Dawn, I wanted
Mhm.
to also go in that direction too because one of the things I saw Anthony Tillman tweet about this as well.
Mhm.
But one of the things that seemed to, I mean, bothered some people, bothered me, is this focus, even after
Mhm.
the win
Mhm.
yesterday
Mhm.
by South Carolina, this focus on this one player, Caitlin Clark, from the losing team. It just took me back to last year when LSU defeated them, and
Mhm.
the first lady made her crazy comments about inviting both of them to the White
Correct.
House, and Angel was like, "No, we'll go to the Obamas." But this
Right.
idea of continually, um, making it about her, even if she's the best player, if you want to accept that she's the best player,
Right. And
how
even
about the
Dawn,
best coach?
yeah, and even Dawn said in her
post-game interview on stage, she gave Caitlin Clark a shout out. Like, she did that on the grandest stage ever. And, I had a lot of people on my live after the game say that Dawn could have done that in the post-game conference, like in the locker room, like after the game. But she decided to do something like that. And again, to Takuma's point, like, this speaks of her leadership. So for the media to intentionally choose to kind of like center her, like there was like CNN who did it, who basically congratulated South Carolina and then had an image of Caitlin Clark. Then there was Complex Sports, the post that Anthony Tillman was pointing out, like where they're talking about South Carolina winning and the focus is Caitlin Clark. Listen, I think that's a huge part of why I'm just not going to ever really fully give this girl her flowers, because, girl, you already are being platformed. You're being put up there on a pedestal as the greatest ever. And, sweetie, you've never won a national championship. So I don't even want to hear that conversation. She's done. Let's get ready for her to go into the WNBA. Let's get ready for her to get ready for the draft, because I know this narrative spinning that they're going to do with her when she gets there for the draft to get prepared for all of that is going to be singled on her. But the biggest thing to me is it's just like, this proves like how Black women and just Black people in general, when we do something exceptional, when we do something great, somehow there's somebody like a Dan, that reporter from Outkick, who asked that transphobic question, after Dawn wins this major game. And there's somebody that's sitting there ready to knock us down immediately. But like Michelle Obama said, you go low, I'm going to go high every time. But you know what? I ain't Michelle Obama, so I'm just going to say that.
Right. There you go. I'm glad you qualified that, because I was going there too, Dawn. I'm going to
go low with you.
Yeah. You want to go down there? I can get in the mud too. I can get deep. I can get down below the earthworms if you want me to.
Oh, Lord.
Shoot. But and I like the point that Power 96 brings up too. I was going to mention this to you as well, Dawn, and Takuma, weigh in too, because remember last year, when Raven Johnson Clark was disrespecting, Caitlin Clark was disrespecting her, waving her off, saying she couldn't guard her. Well, what happened Sunday?
Shut her down. And I think that just speaks to the coaching, that speaks to Dawn even said this, and we've mentioned this before, where Dawn said that she allows them to play freely. She speaks that into like she talks about that. And I think the importance of that, if you've ever been a former student athlete, is knowing that someone is not always criticizing you for every mistake that you make. Someone's not yelling at you for every, thing that they think could be going wrong or that they can see on the floor. Dawn was calm, but we also know Dawn was calm for other reasons too. But at the same time, Dawn knew her girls. She knew those players. She knew that they were able to rise up to that situation. And the fact that, Raven was somebody who didn't do a whole lot of talking, didn't do a whole lot of taunting. She just really played the game. And it was just so exciting to see them keep stacking that lead, to keep staying on them defensively. One of the biggest things that I've always said this entire tournament, anybody that was playing Iowa was going to have to out-rebound them. You were going to have to play the refs. You're going to have to do those two things, out-rebound them and play the refs.
Play who doing?
Play the refs, the referees.
Very much.
The officiating was terrible this tournament. And I need all refs reviewed. I don't need to see these same refs in next year's tournament. Like, I'm sorry, go find somewhere else to do that. We don't need that in this tournament. We need top-tier officiating coming from referees who are going to blow their whistle on both sides of the ball. This season was just, we've seen that throughout the entire season, but when you get to tournament play, like when you get to conference play, okay, yeah, we might see some mistakes here and there, but when we get to like the actual tournament, you're talking about Elite 8, Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4, and the actual finals game, we should not be talking about the refs more than we are talking about everybody else. My entire timeline was about the referees not doing something. And even when they did call, a play for South Carolina, like fouls. When they finally did call some fouls on Caitlin, it was towards the end of the game.
End of the
It was
game.
just like,
Because she
are
had
you kidding me?
Dawn, she had 0 fouls. I think it was like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes to go.
0 fouls, and then within a minute, she had 2 fouls. Baby, that girl pushed off that entire game. She should have been in foul trouble before the third quarter.
That part.
There was one sequence in which it was so blatant. Stevie Wonder could see her push that girl down.
Nah, not Stevie Wonder.
I mean, it was just so blatant. And then, I mean, it was like the refs was standing right there.
Was standing right there.
It was perfect.
Was standing right there. And it was frustrating too, that one of the comments that I made, I want to say after Iowa beat UConn, where I was very blatant and honest and was like, let me tell y'all something. This girl could possibly win this national championship. And I'm telling, and the devil can help her, but I'm telling you, I'm not giving her that greatest college basketball player title ever. Like, I'm just not doing
football
it.
Player.
She was, okay, to be fair, flag on the play. But to me, it was one of those things where I already knew how hard it was going to be for South Carolina to play not only these girls in their game, because I was being consistent. The only other thing that gave them a spark was the little Afro Puffs girl. The girl with the Afro Puffs, that she was balling. That's my name for her. She showed up. She did her thing in the Final Four to get to the championship, and she showed up in that championship game. But I think my biggest thing was just making sure that people knew that there are journalists or people in the press who are actually calling this and telling you what the actual truth is when we see this game happening. Most press and media that's there, I mean, you can speak to this. When you're physically there at a game and you're trying to cover something, you have to be undeniably unbiased, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm at home. I'm at home covering the game. I'm going to tell you every damn thing I see. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not missing a thing. So if I'm telling you that this is what's happening, like, you should have seen my mentions. You should have seen the white women and white men who were like, oh, you're salty. Oh, you're hating. Oh, you're upset. You hate Caitlin. No. Let's not make this about her, because I've given Caitlin her credit where credit is due. And I think we all have done that. We have all shined a light on her. But guess what? I'm tired of that light. Okay? It has nothing to do with her. It has a lot to do with how the media spins a narrative for her. It has a lot to do with how you think those Owl fans, those MAGA right fans that come after any and everybody that has anything like critiquing her or critiquing how they play basketball. Like, no, I don't have time for that. And as somebody who I've covered sports since 2011, I've been in this for a very, very long time. I am not gonna let anybody silence me from calling out the truth and the things that's what literally empowers me in working in Black media and Black press, because we are the ones who make sure that things are reported the way that they should be. We are the ones who are making sure that you get back to the point and centering it back on a Black woman who has made history in this moment, and people are trying to take that shine and that credit away from her. We are the people who make sure that you understand how bold and inclusive this South Carolina team is. I'm telling you now, and this might be an early prediction for me, I'm telling you now, the way that this team is set up, we probably gonna see them in the tournament and/or Final Four and at the finals for the next 2 to 3 years. And I'm gonna love every bit of it. I'm gonna love every bit of it, because now it's time to really give South Carolina credit, like how we've always talked about Tennessee and UConn. South Carolina's right there. It's time.
Definitely so. Definitely so.
Absolutely.
Tacoma, I want to throw this question to you, because Mike V is asking this question, and I figured I should throw this to you. He says, how does a coach like Dawn Staley maneuver in a very conservative, anti-DE&I state like South Carolina? The politics of it all.
Well, I thought we saw an example of that when she shouted out Caitlin Clark on the victory stand right there, right? She has an uncanny sense of exhibiting, I think, the right touch in dealing with people, right? This is a people relationship business that she's in, along with coaching. And she exemplified that in that very moment, in my opinion, how she's able to maneuver, exhibit class. But then when you look at her record, what she's accomplished as a player, what she's accomplished as a coach, that would be like Deion Sanders taking Colorado and winning 3 championships on top of the resume he built as a player. So we're seeing just somebody who's one of one. And as much as you may not like her, the track record is unimpeachable.
Yeah, and Dawn is going, why'd you have to compare it to Dion?
No, you know what? I mean, I do get a little triggered when I hear his name, but it was a great comparison because quiet as his kept, let Dion do something like that. Let Dion, they're not going to undercut him. They're not going to undermine him in his and whatever greatness that he steps into, correct? So let's give credit where credit is due. Dion has done some amazing things in college football. And if we're going to be honest about it, this has a lot to do with respectability politics, and it also has to do with gender. You know what I'm saying? Because a black man can do this. And depending on who he's playing and depending on who he's up against, right? Let me be fair. Depending on who he's playing and who he's up against, they're still going to platform said black man. But we see in real time how Dawn has literally shaken up women's basketball, and just as a whole, because we see her players still actively playing. We saw her former player, interviewing people at the game and was still her full self. And you know what? I want to give a shout out to ESPN, whoever else Aaliyah Boston and all of them were working with, because no one, you could see in that moment where they allowed her to enjoy that moment because she didn't have that moment as a player. I think that's beautiful. I think that speaks to people actually understanding the gravity of the moment. So when it comes to understanding how we as Black people operate in this country, because it's not just the South, in this country, because every state, there are over, and I could be wrong, guys, y'all can correct me, there's like about 23, 24 states that have completely demolished DEI efforts after the affirmative action rule came down.
It's still going, still
and
counting.
Still going. So let's not like put the focus in on South Carolina, because I think she's going to do what she needs to do, and she has the support of that fan base. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, where that bridge that sports tends to give us. Yes, there are moments where, like, someone said we want a race war yesterday. And as much as I'm laughing, I had to think about that and be like, you know what? It was mighty close. You get what I'm saying? Because if I would have won that, I don't even want to think about it, you know? And as far as I'm concerned, I just think that just speaks to how, again, sports can bridge us in a way that we have all of these things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. We're on high alert. We're triggered by a lot of things in the news. And I just think that every time that we can show up at a game like that and pull for whoever we're pulling for and come together as sports fans and enjoy that, I think that kind of just shows the beauty of this country, because at the end of the day, we all want to be rooting for somebody. We all want to be, you know, at somewhere where the energy is high and we're enjoying, we're joyful, we're seeing this beautiful moment, we're sharing in history, like all of these moments and things like that. So I just think that, you know, sports can do a lot of things, and I wanna name it, that it's important that we don't just kind of focus in on, you know, how, you know, the southern states are doing, because baby, these northern states are catching up. They're catching up. And I just think we as a people, we need to be reminded that it's okay for us to show up as our full selves and create joy whenever we need that.
Yeah. And before we move on, though, I want to mention something. We were out a couple of days last week, and get a chance to bring to you guys some sad news out of the Black press family. This coming Wednesday is the funeral for James Washington, the president of the Atlanta Voice, vice president of the Atlanta Voice, general manager, former publisher of the Dallas Weekly. Some may remember James on this program. In fact, James was probably the first publisher, not probably, he was the first publisher back during the coronavirus pandemic, when that first erupted in March of 2020. We did a program, and James Washington was on the program with me and a gentleman out of Dallas who was selling educational products. But James was a big supporter of the NMPA's live streams. Certainly a big supporter of Let It Be Known, and certainly just a all around. He was one of the Dawn, and I know you worked for him, you worked with him, you knew him well, but he was certainly one of the good ones, as you say, the
Mm-hmm.
good guys, and he is certainly going to be missed big time. There, you see him with Atlanta Voice publisher Janice Ware, his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just a genuine guy, someone who, if he said it, he said it because he meant it. He said it
Mm-hmm.
because he was speaking the truth, at least as the truth as he knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Never misled you in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
Just such a an amazing guy who I'm certainly on a personal level is going to miss the conversations we've had. And like I said, I know Dawn, you've had some various experiences with James
Mm-hmm.
Washington and the Atlanta
Mm-hmm.
Voice, but I know that um, I can say that we all will miss him.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still completely heartbroken. I know, if we're going to be 100% honest, we've known about some of his health issues and how he was fighting through that. It was a blessing to see him when he was at some of the meetings or the conventions and conferences. I think I do want to make mention of how important this man was to Black press and to younger journalists, and especially women journalists, because if we're going to be quite frank, right? If I'm gonna, keep it 100, there's not a lot of Black men who are in powerful positions who looks to help mentor and or cultivate and connecting relationships with younger Black women so that they can understand their worth and their power in news, right? And I think that the beautiful thing of that is that there are a lot of people who tend to be in those power positions who abuse that, and he used that in the right way. Always. You might not have agreed with him. I can count on my fingers, y'all fingers, Greer's fingers, anybody that's in the chat fingers, how many times me and Mr. Ware, Mr. I used to call him Mr. Ware. So that ought to tell you how
He
our
didn't
relationship
mind.
is.
He
He
didn't
didn't
mind.
mind at all. Like, I used to call him Mr. Ware, but Mr. Washington, me and Mr. Washington used to stay at it. And it would come from a place of, he had one way of thinking, but if you had a counterpoint, he needed you to prove it. And if you could prove it to Mr. Washington, I guarantee you that story was going to be a hit. I guarantee you that marketing or that sales pitch that you were giving him was going to work every single time. And I think the beautiful thing about what that did is it helped me also understand my voice. My voice. The fact that he worked at the Atlanta Voice, the fact that he did what he did at Dallas Weekly, and how he was such a grand man that wasn't
Yeah.
loud with it.
Right.
Like, he would always tell me, "Dom, you gotta always be loud." I do and do, but sometimes what I did learn in him saying something like that is that me showing up in the room was loud enough. Me sitting
Mhm.
down at the table and waiting to speak my turn was loud enough. Me showing up with ideas was bold and loud enough, because most of the time people weren't expecting me to be as smart as I am, or to kind of put things together and say, well, let's try this. So I think about the women that I saw and their responses to his death. And that, to me, that's touching of his legacy, not discrediting the work that he's done with young men or men or what have you. But I just think that that's a bold thing to see, especially in Black media, a man like that really champion for young Black women to kind of step up and find their way and do the things that they're doing. And I know, like, in my heart, you all know I love the Atlanta Voice family.
Yes.
In my heart, I'm wanting to cover Mrs. Ware. I wanted to cover their children, understanding that, Mr. Washington's children have literally done things their way and created their own legacy within his legacy. And I think that that's so important to name that, and how they're carrying that torch and they've consistently done that. And he was always proud. He was always proud. You always heard about his kids. You always heard about, the things his grandchildren would do. Like, you always heard great things. And I remember telling Jessica, his daughter-in-law, I remember telling her, she saw my thread on Twitter where I was kind of explaining how I found out the news and how heartbroken in that moment and how alone in that moment I felt. I was telling her that I was grateful that her and Patrick and his sibling could understand how much we appreciate the fact that they shared their father with us. Because for a lot of us, where in Washington were like our parents in media. Like, you know what I'm saying? They were our guiding lights. They were the people who, if Mr. Washington approved it and Mrs. Ware was against it, all we had to do was like get in between and try to get them both on the same page. You get what I'm saying? And Washington was our voice of reason. So like one of the I will end with this. One of the last things that I do remember of him was when we were all in Nashville, and I think it was the night of the awards where the publishers get to go up and win the awards and things like that. And how much he lit up to hear me cheering for Mrs. Ware. And after, he came up to me and he said, you know what? She needed to hear that. She needed to hear somebody really rooting for her in those moments. And he said, that's when I need you to be loud. That's when I need you to be heard. Like, that's when he said, those are the moments where that's the dawn that I know when you're rooting for somebody, you're always rooting for them and it empowers them. He said, that's going to be a huge part of what your legacy is going to be. And he's like, he's always said that he's proud, even when those of us have left the Atlanta Voice for whatever reasons that we left for, he's always been that person of, well, you know where you got your foundation. You know where you started. You know where you came from. And you can be proud of that. And I've never discredited that. And I've never, said anything in light of, moving forward. But I think that's the beautiful thing about Black press is how we all hold space for each other and we uplift each other no matter what. And I think that that's a beautiful thing that you just don't see across mainstream media, where people are genuinely rooting for each other no matter what they're going through or what's happening for them. So Mr. Washington will be missed. Wednesday will be a very hard day. I'm going to attempt to try to not only just do the memorial here in Atlanta Wednesday, but I'm going to try to get to Dallas. I think I heard the news is supposed to be on the 4th, and that's actually my mom's birthday, and I'm supposed to be in Mississippi. But depending on what time things are, flights can be arranged and stuff like that. So I just don't want it to be where, it's kind of like a lot of the support is here versus, people trying to get into Dallas to, show support for the family. And I'm heartbroken. Like I had no words for days. It took me a while to get to this point where I could talk like this and not actually cry. Like
and
it's
like
hard.
you said too, we knew about his illness. We knew that, especially this last month, we knew that this day was going to come. Tacoma, I don't know how much interaction you and James had, but I do know that any loss in the Black press is a loss for all of us.
Absolutely. I have not had the benefit of ever having to meet Mr. Washington. I just know that his name rings out, as they say, right? When you look at people who not only are able to do it professionally, driving, increases in subscriptions under their leadership, to be able to have multiple successes and multiple stops. But it's also, right, that one-to-one. And from what I understand, he's a leader that I think we all in Black media in positions of management should strive to become.
And it's interesting you use the word leader, and we'll close on this segment with this. James, him and I, like I said, we had some great conversations, very candid conversations. And Janice as well. Janice, in fact, we were in Cincinnati back in before, this is the year before the pandemic, 2019. Um, I just remember her and James. James said, "You got to talk to, you got to talk to her. You got to talk to Janice. She needs to talk to you." And I'm like, "Okay, what kind of trouble I'm mixed up in now?" And she pulls me over. She says, "Come here, let me talk to you." Janice at the time was the treasurer for NMPA, and she says, "Let me give you some unsolicited financial advice." And she was telling me about financial planning and things of that nature.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
James and I would talk about these things, and I saw him last. I was headed to Florida for our midwinter conference, and he and Janice. I was in North Carolina, and I stopped in Atlanta. It was a connecting flight from North Carolina. I was at Duke University with Dr. Chavis, and um, caught up with James and Janice in the airport. And right there at the airport, we're talking about some great things that he had in mind that needed to be he felt needed to be implemented. But going back to the leader thing, a leader sometimes doesn't take the lead, right?
right.
James, who twice, at least twice in recent years, had at least confided in me. I don't know who else. I'm sure his wife knew that he was considering a run for chairman, NMPA
Mhm,
chairman.
mhm,
Um, the first time was again back in Cincinnati, but
mhm,
that's when Houston Forward Times publisher Karen Carter Richards um, wanted to be chair, and she actually won the chairmanship. But he didn't run because he didn't want to cause division. Right?
mhm,
They were friends, and not only that, he wanted the NMPA to be united. And then when Bobby Henry, the current chair, was running, James had considered running. But again, because there was someone else running that he felt that he could get behind, he just decided, let me step aside.
mhm,
I'm not going to cause division.
mhm.
I want
Uh,
unity. And that he
mhm,
always preached unity. And
mhm,
so
mhm.
we're going to
That
miss
that's
James a
beautiful.
lot.
That's beautiful. That says a lot about his character too, because for someone to have done the things that he's done and just like his resume alone, his ego could have taken over and been like, "Well, I can do it better. I can do
Right.
it better." I like it
Right.
could have been and he's always been a we, you know.
Yep.
And in those moments where I was a part of, and I think people forget this because I did two different stints at the Atlanta Voice, but I think people forget that when I first got to Atlanta Voice, I became a sports editor, and um, when I came in at that time, that was when the Atlanta Voice was going full speed digital, right?
Hmm.
And the great late Marshall stepped up and was like, "Mr. Washington, we've got a solid team. We know what we're going to do. We know how we're going to handle it." And all Washington said was, just make sure we can sell, right? Just make sure. At every turn, he was like, make sure we can sell. Is this something that we can sell? Like, it's like it was ingrained in our minds because in our minds, we were just trying to do the work. But Takuma, you can agree with this. Yes, we want engagement. Yes, we want the numbers. But if there's nothing that we can give advertisers or someone that we want to buy into us as a media outlet, then we are literally just hamsters on a wheel, just doing the thing, doing the work. Because again, we talk about the lack of resources in this space. We talk about the lack of funding that we receive at every turn.
Yep.
And so Washington was always that the person who said this is why the money matters. Like it's not going to be because we're doing the work because we want the money or we're driven by the money. It's just that when we do the work, money can amplify that. Money can create more around that. And he's the person who, as you can see on the screen, when we worked with TBS, he jumped behind me 100% on merging that relationship and creating an opportunity for a Black media outlet to be working with somebody like TBS like that. We were in studio in their studios so that we could learn how to create our own at that time. And so by the time that I left the Atlanta Voice after my two stints, I was like chief brand officer. Like to come from sports editor to managing editor to vice president of operations to chief brand officer. That has everything to do with someone like a man like a James Washington in the building saying, Dawn has a knack for this. Let's move her here. Dawn needs to do this. Let's move her here. And let's help her understand how she can, literally improve her skill sets, because I'm a person, if there's something to do in the room, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And I don't care. I could be the host. I'll walk away from the camera and I'll just, do something behind the scenes and things of that nature. And Mr. Washington was a person who noticed things like that, who was very observant. And I loved how, younger journalists would challenge him and he would allow them to challenge them. But then he would be like, okay, so are you ready for my rebuttal? Are you ready for my reply? And he would kindly be like, okay, you're wrong on this. Or I can probably support you on this, but let me give you another perspective. And I just think giants like that, when you lose a giant like that, it's very, very hard to kind of see how you can move and maneuver in this space when you don't have that giant in the room. He's a silent giant, but he's so big and vast that it's like you're going to miss seeing him move around the room the way that he did because he did it silently. You never really necessarily knew what he was doing unless he came up to you and explained to you what he was doing. But he was one of those people you wanted to watch in the room and who he was talking to, because clearly he knew who was next up and who needed to be, amplified and platformed. So this is going to be so hard. This is going to be so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And our hearts go out again to Janice Ware and to Patrick Washington and the rest of the family. Patrick is the publisher of the Dallas Weekly. It's a solar eclipse of the heart, as the song goes, but we're going to talk about a solar eclipse that is going to grace the skies over North America today. One of the most hotly anticipated sky watching events in recent years, weather permitting. Millions of people in Mexico, 15 U.S. states, and Eastern Canada will have the chance to see the moon slip between Earth and sun and temporarily blocking the sun's light. It's going to go dark sometime this afternoon here in the Northeast, Takuma. What do you talk about this moment? How do you cover this, Takuma, as the manager editor? How do you direct your journalists to cover this?
Being there personally and being able to convey the hysteria, the hype, the awesomeness about this. Is not a once in a lifetime event, but it's pretty close. And being able to provide that context, but also making sure that people have the right glasses so they don't damage their eyes trying to look into it.
Yeah, our neighbor brought us a pair of glasses yesterday, saying being prepared. But I'm like, listen, it's the earthquake was enough for me.
Yeah,
look, I'm telling you now, I'm gonna be asleep because I already set my alarm. My kids gonna be home. It's the fact that the kids are out of school, and as much as I think my son's probably gonna try to step outside and kind of check it out and things like that, but I think I saw one of the last eclipse with my other son while I was in San Antonio after his basic training for the Air Force. And if I've seen one, I've seen enough, and I think the other thing about this is kind of really understanding that we as a country, we still love science, and there are so many young people who aren't exposed to the joy of science and really understanding how these planets are moving and what's happening. I mean, right now we're going through a retrograde with Mercury, and most of my timeline is talking about how they're shifting through that and how they're dealing with that. So it's in real time. We're going to see how people are responding to that. We're going to see certain images that'll probably come out of this, which will be, the amazing thing of how iPhone users and Android users will go against each other on who's got the better picture. It's gonna be such an American sport right now.
Right.
Did you see it? What time did you see it? I saw 2 minutes earlier than you. That type of thing where there's gonna be some fun around it. But let me tell you, Dawn's gonna check out. I've got my nap scheduled on my phone, and when I am supposed to lay down, I'm going to go to sleep. And I'll wake up probably after it's done.
So it's supposed to last, the longest stretch of totality will last about 4 minutes and 28 seconds to figure out when the various phases of the eclipse will be visible where you live. You can go to nationaleclipse.com and timeanddate.com.
That's
Nationaleclipse.com
great.
and timeanddate.com. Mike V says the blackest part of the day doesn't have equity for Black communities to see.
You
And
know
of course,
what?
of course, Power 96 says he's
Boom.
covering the eclipse by grilling steaks and drinking
I know
moonshine.
that's right.
And David Youngblood says Dawn is old enough to have a son
Yes.
in the military.
Yes,
Black
I am.
clearly doesn't crack.
Yes, I
Wow.
am.
I expected that last comment that David made to come from Power 96, but here we are. David's making these comments. Throwing it out there, huh? Shooting the shot.
The fan club is growing. Yes,
There
yes,
you
yes.
go. And speaking of Takuma and Dawn, we talked about, of course, the national championship. Tonight is the men's national championship. But here's the thing: with sports comes sports betting. And state after state, Centers for Problem Gambling are noticing an alarming rise in calls to their helplines. The circumstances reported are also getting more severe, according to the directors of 5 problem gambling centers, a gambling researcher, and an addiction counselor. People are filing for bankruptcy or losing homes or relationships. At the same time, these callers are skewing younger and younger. Often they are men in their 20s and 30s. Sports betting has become, as you would have expected, Takuma, a major problem.
And we saw it coming, right? This is the other shoe that was going to drop, right? We had this boom in sports betting, but I think what's different in this era is that with these apps, sports betting has been gamified. These apps are set up in a way to trigger that addiction, and these companies have taken full advantage of that to the point where the betting experience is immersed into the actual viewing experience. That's coming up really soon as well, if not already here. So this was it was just a matter of time for this other shoe to drop, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Dawn, the last time you guys were on, I mentioned the quote from Cleveland Cavaliers coach Bernie Bickerstaff, JB Bickerstaff, but he also said that he's been receiving threats from gamblers.
Sports fans are passionate people, very passionate people. I think I'm pretty honest when I tell people if I'm in a room with maybe religious people and sports people, 9 times out of 10, the sports people will probably out dominate the religious people just in their beliefs and who they're rooting for and all of the things and the passion that they have. Now, I'm not knocking all religions, but what I'm saying is you're going to know a sports fan when you see them. And I think one of the things that we're missing here is the education around sports betting and gambling. Now, I think because it has been gamified, like Takuma has said, for some people, it's like, oh, I'll just do it this one time, or oh, I'll just do it for this particular team for this season. But as the season goes, and we know how unpredictable these sports leagues are, like even down to college basketball, or college collegiate sports, I feel like there has to be more education in all communities about how this goes. Now, if I'm going to be honest here, we're seeing this information come out, but I would like to know the demographics behind that, because I'm guaranteeing you that majority of the people that quite possibly are losing their homes and doing the things that they're doing don't look like us right now.
Right.
Don't look like us right now, because I don't know a Black person right now who is going to bet a whole lot of money on some stuff without actually kind of knowing a guarantee or knowing something is going to be on the other side, or knowing that their loss is going to be very minimal. Okay. And at this point, because even when you talk about how, people are losing homes, there are people refinancing their homes, doing certain things to get more money so that they can buy season tickets. So in the event that someone does something like that and basically, paying for things that come on, let's be reasonable here. You can go to half the season games. You can pick and choose certain games that you go to. You don't have to go to every single game to where you're refinancing your home and then eventually you're priced out or you're unable to take care of what you need to take care of.
No, people
And
did that for tickets to Beyonce concert.
listen, come on, people were let's keep it 100. People were taking out new credit cards because I saw somebody now who said if she goes on tour, which is I think they mentioned that for Cowboy Carter, where I've seen at least 5 people come down my timeline talking about, well, I gotta apply for a new credit card, and I know these people in real life, and I know for a fact that that's what they're gonna do. So as far as I'm concerned, it's like not only is it about money management and understanding what you can do and whether or not you can bet, whether you're willing to take a loss and whether you can, afford to do that. It's also the education behind sports betting and gaming and all of these things that actually contribute towards the gambling addiction. And I think also another thing that we have to just be very, very honest about, a lot of times people are not willing to admit that they have a problem. And in being in denial, you're going to keep digging and digging and digging yourself in more debt. And America has always had a debt problem, has always had a debt issue. And so, I mean, as many times as we've been in war, we always got some money to pay for it, but we ain't got money to pay for this other stuff that we need to pay for. But as a country, we're in debt. So I just think that now one of the things that I would like to see Black press do, because it's important for us to educate our communities, is to start having these conversations around gambling and all of those things, because there's going to be a generational divide in that conversation, because whether the older generation is doing it or not, you need to have a conversation with the younger generation and making sure that they understand what that is and what it looks like.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I was going to ask Takuma, as the managing editor out at one of the most famous Black newspapers ever, the Chicago Defender. Is there a mandate from you or from even higher up to kind of cover this and to provide information on resources?
Well, Real Times in general, we do run a financial management column every week. Damon Carr, to talk about financial planning. And I think, to echo what Dawn said, I think there's a mandate in general. We are coming up, April is Financial Awareness Week, a month rather. And so it's incumbent upon us to continue to pump out that information, especially. And in terms of the education around gaming, I think that individual people who want to sign up for one of these apps need to know explicitly what they're coming into. They're coming into a field where there are, pardon my expression, they're guppies entering the realm of sharks, people who study this like a science, people who do not take losses, where you're in a position based on what you allocate that you'll most likely lose what you're betting. And I think that education around the industry and those time-tested principles about investment, about financial management, about budgeting, which we run every week in the Defender, is critical. I mean, I love Beyonce. And I don't know if I would take out a mortgage to see a concert. Like, okay,
Sade,
I might. I don't know. I might think about it.
There's nobody.
Right.
I will watch my timeline. I have no fear of missing out. I'm good with my good credit and my minimal debt, at this point. Another thing that we have to just kind of be mindful in this space is when we do give this information out, how do people receive it, right? It can't be from a place of, don't do it, right? Because when you what happens when you tell kids not to do something? They do it. Okay. So in general, in the mindset of educating people, meet people where they are, and also be mindful that most people may not receive this information, but just know, like, if you can reach 2, 3, 4, 5 people, then you've done your job. Another thing that I just feel that people don't really kind of like make the connection between sports betting and gambling is that number one, sports betting is gambling. So let's like you have to name that because for a lot of people psychologically, betting, that's like me calling a friend and saying, hey, who you got for the Final Four? And I'm gonna pay you $200 if I lose, and you pay me $200 if I win, right? It's as simple as that. But in that mindset, like if you take that and you start doing that, something like that consistently, and you're calling these lines and you're doing these things online, like you're part of the gamification of sports betting, you are now developing, and you're either developing a skill or you're developing an addiction, because there's a fine line between those two things. And in the light of what Takuma was mentioning of how there are people who have studied this, who have done these things, you have to look at sports betting as investing, in my opinion. Okay. A lot of people aren't investing. A lot of people aren't well versed in understanding the stock market. So how would you want to jump into gambling like this without actually knowing the process and understanding some of those things? So in some of the coverage that's probably going to come out of this, I would like to see more video content of people talking about this type of thing and actually showing people, how do you place a bet? How do you, like, where are you going to place a bet? All of those things. Like, there's so many ways we can educate people.
Dawn, the way the federal government mandated that eventually that cigarette companies do PSA.
Come on. We need a PSA ASAP. Yeah. I knew exactly where you was going with this. Yep. We need that ASAP. But guess what? They're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do it because they're making money off of this too.
Yeah, they're making big time money without question. Without question. Listen, so we've gone a little overtime, so I just want to quickly throw in these two news items. Get a quick weigh in from each of you. The first one being Haiti. At least 450 U.S. nationals have been evacuated from Haiti since last month, escaping the ongoing political turmoil and violence there. Those who remain are now struggling to leave, and their relatives in the United States are desperate to see them return home. Takuma, we'll start with you on that one. What can the U.S. do? What should they be doing?
Wow. That's a extremely there are historical implications here. Of course, there is a intermingled history here, of course, and with that said, there are root causes that need to be addressed as to why Haiti continues to be destabilized as a country and prone to these types of takeovers. I think that has to be addressed to prevent things from this happening. Of course, you extricate the people who are there, right, from this country. But I think there's also a mandate to get at the root of why this country continues to be destabilized for whatever reason. There's a lot of ways you can go with that, but I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, Dawn, any thoughts on?
I feel like more recently, I think we found out that the government's charter for flights is getting ready to end soon to try to get some of these people over here to a more peaceful environment. I don't think that should end. I think if we have the ability to somehow get firearms over there for some of the Haitian gangs that are actually rebelling over there, then you have every right to step up and say, if you need to get away or if we need to be able to help you escape, then we can do that. Also, we actually do need to kind of figure out what type of force we need to bring into Haiti, because Haiti has always been like somewhat of that difficult spot for this country to kind of figure out where they should be and where they should not be. And I think that that's one of the things where it's like, in the event of what we see happening in Israel and all of these other places like Ukraine, where the government continues to send money over there, why aren't you finding ways to help do that in Haiti? One last point
Right.
I will make that's going to be very, very hard is how these people are treated when they get to this country. Because
Mhm.
we all know how they treat some of the immigrants that come across the border and all of that. But and we also know that there have been mayors, there have been governors who have outrightly said that they don't want none of these people in their states or cities, and they're busing them or flying them to other places, and these people are being displaced. So what's the transition process for these people when they do get here, and how are we making sure that they're being put in actual safe spaces versus another chaotic situation in a free country?
Yeah. And real quick too, and we're gonna continue to bring information on the Haiti situation in the days and weeks to come. Certainly wish to hoping for the best for those, not just the U.S. citizens over there, but all of Haiti, all of the citizens there. All of those lives are important. After the in St. Charles County, Missouri, Dawn and Tacoma, after the St. Charles all white school board threatened to eliminate both a Black history class and Black literature class, saying the curriculum contained elements of critical race theory. The community was outraged and it drew national media attention. So the board kind of retreated and said the curriculum would be reviewed, rewritten to be, quote, largely politically neutral. And it was brought back in time for the next school year. But here you have the biggest complaint here is that you have an all white school board in a predominantly Black district saying we don't want any type of Black history taught. We don't want Black literature.
Let me tell you something. There is a general, we've always known that there's a general attack on Black people as a whole, just how we exist in these spaces. But there is going to be, we are seeing in real time how they are literally trying to erase our history, our access to resources, the progress that we've made over the years, and all of the things. There's an important journalist that I'm going to raise right now. Her name is Nicole Carr. She writes for ProPublica. She is Black. She's a
Yes.
professor at Morehouse Journalism Program. This woman has been reporting for at least the past maybe 5 or 6 years. I could be wrong. Nicole could be watching this. She's probably gonna text me and message me, girl. I've only been doing it for this many years. But my point is, she has been covering local school districts who have been doing this for years. The fact that this has been happening for years, and I'm not seeing how our communities aren't making sure that we're placing our people on these school boards. Why are we not? Because let me tell you something. I know we are all trying to survive and work and do the things that we can do. But this is what happens when we don't run for elections, for these positions. This is what happens when we allow other people to choose for us who is in the leadership of our school boards, our city councils, our state legislators, all of the things. Show up and vote. If you need to write somebody's name in and tell another 30 people that you put their name in so that they might win by 31 votes, make that happen. You get what I'm saying? Because there's not a lot of people that focus in on school board elections. And more recently, where I've seen this actually impact a school board was in Atlanta. Atlanta's last school board election was like right up there with the election where Andre Dickens ended up winning the mayoral election. It was up there. And we know from a national news standpoint, Atlanta is always on that little ticker to kind of show you how Black people are really standing up and saying, we need more people to do this. And I brought up Atlanta's school district and how their school board election changed some things for them, because for the very first time in I don't know how many years it's been or how many decades it's been, but it's been a very long time, they finally had a teacher that was elected to the school board, and it was a Black man.
Wow.
Now, there's other Black people on the school board, but to my point is, you mean to tell me teachers can't run for school board positions? Is there really a conflict? You get what I'm saying? Is there, are you, to me, I'm looking at that, are y'all done? Because, I think if a teacher has that resume, has leadership skills, has shown that they have done things in the community, they have every right to run for a position. But I'm saying that to say that it's just important that when we hear these things, the other thing that we should be strategizing besides showing up and being in opposition of every single thing that this council is doing or your council is doing is making sure that we are in our neighborhoods talking about, or we're in our churches talking about, okay, so who gonna run for a position next year? We need to challenge this person because this person was the person who brought this up, and we need to unseat at least 3 or 4 of those people so that we can have majority power, people power on these councils or on these school boards. That's what's important at this point. We need to start strategizing around that.
Yeah, Takuma.
And to echo what Dawn is saying, absolutely, that this is a deliberate conservative movement to target school boards, especially in battleground states, especially in states like Georgia, where we have to understand that this isn't like a coincidental thing going on here. We have a purposeful infiltration by conservative groups to come into the school board elections, run for these positions, and influence curriculum. This is deliberate. This is a call for our people to consider school board um, school board positions in addition to whatever other positions that may hold some kind of prestige or more prestige in their eyes. This is the ground level that we're fighting at now when we're talking about an anti-Black movement that's, bent on eradicating our history.
Yeah. Well, Takuma, you're being summoned to the principal's office because Greer says right after the show she needs a word, so don't go nowhere. But thanks to Takuma Robach, the Chicago Defenders managing editor, of course, to the Break of Dawn. Dawn Montgomery, always a privilege to have her on. And thank you all for watching. Let it be known. We'll bring you some more tomorrow. Thanks for watching.